Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber's Government Affairs Forum featuring Attorney General Andrea Campbell. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, and it's really wonderful to have my friend and our Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, address the business community for her first Chamber Government Affairs Forum. Welcome, Attorney General. And I wore my Latin school purple tie in honor of... I want to acknowledge our friend and regular attendee at these breakfasts, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld. Governor, thank you for joining us. And we want to welcome as well the Massachusetts Gaming Commissioner, Nikisha Skinner. Nikisha. Maybe Attorney General will talk a little bit about gambling when we get up here. All right. I want to highlight a few upcoming Chamber events. On June 15th, we'll feature Senate President Karen Spilka, so mark that on your calendars. And on May 16th, the event you can't miss, be sure to join us for our annual meeting, which will convene over 1,300 business and civic leaders this year at the new Omni Hotel across from the Convention Center in the Seaport District. Our annual meeting keynote speaker will be CEO of Slack, Lidiane Jones, who will have a conversation with State Street Chief of Staff Yvonne Garcia. And we have three terrific inductees into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians. I know that everybody in this room is very proud of the city of Boston and the region, and we have a great deal of affection and pride in where we live, and this induction into the Academy of Bostonians is an opportunity for us to say thank you to people who have created that, who have made Boston the city that it is today. Our three inductees this year are Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America, a truly global business leader; Callie Crossley, WGBH radio host of Under the Radar; and John Drew, a visionary of the Drew Company and a pioneer in what is today's Seaport District. So you can find out more about our annual meeting and other Chamber events at bostonchamber.com. And don't forget to join the conversation today on the Chamber's public policy Twitter at GBCC Policy. That's at GBCC Policy. We're almost ready to welcome the Attorney General to the podium, but a few other thank yous to our partners. Thank you to our friends at Comcast who help bring our government affairs programs to a wider audience. And finally, I want to thank our long-standing sponsor and partner for these government affairs forums, Bank of America. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Michal Chamberlain, President, Bank of America, and Chamber Executive Committee member, to introduce the Attorney General.
All right, thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction, and welcome. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. And on behalf of Bank of America and all our teammates that call the Commonwealth home, I'm honored to introduce today's special guest speaker, Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell. As the Commonwealth's 45th Attorney General, Campbell is committed to building economic prosperity and sustainability for all residents. Attorney General Campbell previously served as City Council President in 2018, the first Black woman to hold that title. She also served as legal counsel to Governor Deval Patrick and general counsel at the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. Every day, she's prioritizing the mental health of children, stopping cycles of incarceration and violence, and ensuring that people across the state have access to the AG's office, regardless of zip code, language, or ability. We're thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We look forward to hearing your comments, and without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage Attorney General Campbell.
Thank you, and of course, thank you, Jim, for wearing purple. Latin school is a big deal. There are other folks in this room, I'm sure, who heard that and wanted to yell out, Latin school, Wolfpack. So thank you, but also thank you for the invitation to be here today and to provide some remarks. I'm really grateful to be here with each and every one of you. I also want to thank not only the folks who sponsored the event, who provided the resources so all of us could be here. I want to thank the folks who prepared the breakfast, your coffee, your tea, who are carrying things in and out and doing it quietly. So thank you to those workers who are here this morning. I also want to thank, of course, members of my team. If you work in the AG's office, if you could just quickly stand so people can see you and also maybe harass you. Okay, it's like I don't have a team. Oh, some are in the back. You would think I came here alone, some in the back. And so I just want to thank my hardworking staff. All of you know none of you do your work without a team behind you working hard in partnership with you. So I want to thank those who work really hard at the Attorney General's office. Of course, it was like a reunion here in this room and also in the bathroom, where I ran into a lot of ladies that I know. Like, be careful saying ladies. A lot of folks that I know. Who I've worked with over the years, and just really grateful to see those familiar faces in the room. I didn't get here by myself, and I never forget that there are people who invest in you, who maybe at some point in time were your employer, your colleague, who saw something in you and did everything they could to support you. So thank you to all of my former colleagues and folks who are in this space. Really great to see you. And thank you for the support over the years. So I've been in office just a few months. Friday actually marked 100 days since I've been in office. And I can tell you we have truly hit the ground running. We are wasting no time. And as you can imagine, my to-do list is very extensive and very long and keeps growing. Even as it grows, I remain honored and humbled to serve as the 45th Attorney General of Massachusetts. The first Black woman to serve in this role and the first woman of color to win statewide elected office. I carry that responsibility. I carry that responsibility with a deep sense of purpose and, of course, with the humility and responsibility it deserves. Before I discuss the focus and the vision, of course, for the work in the office, I think it's important to share the framework and the values that guide me, not only in the work, but in life, and when it comes to making decisions or establishing priorities. As many of you know, my life has been deeply impacted by various systems, often overseen by government, and sadly, sometimes they have represented the worst of these systems. My childhood was filled with incredible instability. When I was 8 months old, my mom actually died in a car accident going to visit my father, who was incarcerated at the time. I didn't meet my father until I was 8 years old, and so my brothers and I bounced around living with loved ones, sometimes in the foster care system, another system. He would then be released when I was 8 years old. I would sadly talk to him one morning when I was a sophomore at college, a sophomore at Princeton. I would talk to him in the morning. He would die that same evening when I was 19 years old. My brothers and I, of course, grew up poor. We lived in public housing. But the thing I could count on was an excellent public school education in the 5 schools I attended, including Boston Latin School. I was blessed to have a support system of teachers, mentors, counselors, employers that provided me with safe spaces to cope with that trauma and, most importantly, to learn and to grow. Because of that education and so many caring individuals who influenced my life in a moment, a day, or a season, I was blessed to be the first in my family to go to college and to law school, going to Princeton undergrad and UCLA for law school, and then, of course, coming back from sunny California to Roxbury, Massachusetts, to start my career representing children in education cases. The trauma would continue. My brothers, as some of you know, have cycled in and out of the prison system, and my twin brother, Andrea, would die while in the custody of the Department of Correction as a pretrial detainee when he was only 29 years old as a result of receiving inadequate health care. So you see, my hope is that those who have ever felt left out or left behind those entangled with systems, including our prison system, foster system, healthcare system, educational systems, those that sometimes do not see government as a solution, will no longer feel invisible. I know representation matters, but I also know it's not enough to simply have a certain demographic or lived experience at the table. We must create systems that are transparent, informed by data and real stories of a large cross-section of stakeholders, operate with a sense of urgency, and most importantly, are designed to actually solve the problem we say is at issue. That is what we are doing every single day in the AG's office. We are indeed the people's law firm with an obligation to serve consumers, students, workers, and families that often cannot afford a lawyer. It is about being an advocate, giving a voice to the vulnerable, protecting our rights, and of course, ensuring equal and fair opportunity. All of which I know the business community cares deeply about. Not just as individuals, of course, and residents in this Commonwealth, but as leaders of organizations that need skilled workers, and frankly need happy workers. Workers who are safe, who are protected, and can afford to live in Massachusetts. Given the divisiveness in this country right now, and frankly the issues at play, I seriously believe the role of Attorney General's office has never been more important. Yes, it shapes the law and the policy of Massachusetts, but it also has the authority, the credibility, the expertise to be a convener, and to get things done on topics that may be controversial. But I and the team know we cannot do it without the business community and without each and every one of you in this room. Everywhere I travel in this state, I meet with business leaders, of course, and take stock of their flexibility, innovation, and resilience. It's that kind of ingenuity and generosity of spirit that inspires me and reminds me that our business community will play a pivotal role in how we make life better for all of our residents in the Commonwealth. We, of course, need to be prepared for the future, filled with challenge and opportunity, knowing that it will take public and private partnerships to ensure that everyone, regardless of their demographic in their zip code, prospers and that no one is left behind. From Boston, and we are so Boston-centric, and I can say that I'm born and raised in Boston, and I work, of course, and live in Boston, but from Boston to Springfield, Salisbury to New Bedford, Worcester to North Adams, people in the Commonwealth want and need the same things. Whether you're a teacher, a small business owner, or a large business owner, a grad student, a renter, a homeowner, a parent, young or elder, there are pervasive issues that keep us all up at night. What are they? Creating a level playing field, of course, for businesses and workers alike, building affordable housing with access to transportation, ensuring safe and healthy neighborhoods free of gun violence and pollution, protecting our kids, aging family members, and those who are most vulnerable from addiction, hate, and deception. These issues affect all of us. In a way, that's a good thing, because as challenging and daunting as it may seem, I view this as an opportunity. Massachusetts is at a moment in its history where there is a chance to pursue public policy that helps our residents and benefits the business community all at the same time. The AG's office, I have to tell people, is more than the top cop. Yes, we prosecute crimes and, of course, prosecute individuals, yet we do so much more than that. It is a policy shop. We're focused on taking a practical and impactful approach to issues that will bring positive change to the everyday lives of residents here in the Commonwealth. We will bring about change that will ensure that people who want to live here can, people who want to move here do, people who want to work here find well-paying jobs, have access to affordable childcare, and get the services they need to thrive. By doing these things, we can and will make Massachusetts businesses more competitive and build a better Commonwealth for all of us. So as we implement and refine our strategic plan for the office and continue internal and external conversations, a few priorities rise to the top. So how are we leveling the playing field and helping businesses? First, we're looking to ensure that there's fairness in the marketplace when it comes to new business models. We cannot merely hope that all businesses will engage in responsible conduct. We must instead encourage it and define the office's expectations, especially with respect to new products and industries. One such new industry here, of course, is the sports gaming industry. And thank you for acknowledging the Gaming Commissioner. Jordan, I know, is also here from the Gaming Commission. I, along with the team, have no objection to sports gaming or the sports gaming law, mobile sports betting, and no consumers may enjoy these products. Our office is, however, concerned about the excessive marketing, the addictive nature of betting on an already addictive device, the design of applications which can encourage more betting, the payment to third parties or influencers who encourage consumers to place a specific bet, knowing it probably is a losing bet, and the potential of sharing gathered data related to these users. As the Commonwealth seeks to benefit from the revenue of this industry, I, along with the team, have welcomed the opportunity to engage in dialogue, partner with the Gaming Commission, and of course the operators. We reminded them that we can ensure that companies are treated fairly, that the companies in this industry are governed by the same rules, and while consuming, and also doing all of this while protecting the consumer from addiction, privacy concerns, and of course preventing a potential public health crisis. We need to foster, so that's one way we're helping businesses. We need to foster, of course, and grow strong, diverse, talented pipelines, especially as we see a growth in emerging new industries. As I travel around this state and talk to small business owners and leaders in the business community, there is one thing I consistently hear. They're struggling to find workers. I remind folks who I meet who say, oh, there's no jobs out there. I said, yes, there are. There are plenty of jobs. The question is, what skills do you have? There are thousands of jobs available right now, including in manufacturing, healthcare, technology, that are going unfilled because of a skills gap. Right now, there are over 100,000 more job openings than unemployed workers, and that gap is expected to grow. And even with so many unfilled jobs, of course, we have high unemployment rates for those in the Black and Latino community. As we continue to learn about artificial intelligence and new technologies potentially replacing human capital, including some of the lawyers in the room, the need for skill development and training for permanent jobs and trades becomes even more important. We have an incredible opportunity to invest in and partner with our vocational technical schools and community colleges to focus on job training in growing sectors like computer science, technology, healthcare, and clean energy, to create that pipeline either right out of high school or right out of community college. While there is a role for many elected officials to play, there is also a role for the AG's office to play in this critical conversation. Because we can work, of course, with businesses, employers, advocates, unions, and most importantly, state agencies to, for example, leverage the authority of the office to shift an educational agency's policy as it relates to access and quality and the outcomes of our vocational schools. Working together, we can hopefully improve our vocational system to get to a place where vocational schools and the trades are given the respect they deserve and are viewed as the Ivy League jobs are viewed, as of course, the ability to break cycles of poverty and to serve our state's needs in the future. How are we protecting consumers? That is, you and your workers. We are taking on companies every single day that seek to scam you and putting that money back into your pocket. A major concern right now is our elders. Many of your parents, many of you in the room, I won't name names. The Commonwealth must be a place that recognizes the contribution of our aging residents by providing them with the care they deserve, a welcoming place to retire, to grow old, free from bad actors who are seeking to deceive them and prey on their vulnerabilities that age, of course, will give us all. To address this population and their issues in an intersectional way, my office actually will establish an elder justice unit, which will be designed to investigate scams and robocalls and other unfair and deceptive business practices that disproportionately impact our elders and, of course, others who are vulnerable, and ensure that there is safe, fair, and equitable treatment within our long-term care facilities and nursing homes. To do this, we'll leverage the expertise of our Medicaid Fraud Division, which has the authority to address these types of cases of abuse, neglect, financial exploitation, and mistreatment, and the expertise of our Consumer Protection Division, which has deep experience in addressing unfair and deceptive practices. We're also putting money back into the pockets of workers. We remain busy ensuring that those who go to work actually get paid the benefits and the wages they're entitled to. Ensuring that workers are paid and treated fairly and safely should be a cornerstone to a prosperous Commonwealth. In 2023, that principle should be uncontroversial. But so far this fiscal year, more than 400 companies have violated our worker protection laws, impacting close to 5,000 workers. And we often talk about wage theft only in the context of the construction industry. Right now, at the top of the list in terms of wage theft is hospitality, hotels, and those who work in service. So as we are, of course, enforcing these laws, we offer wage clinics as well to offer knowledge to workers and employers on how to do right. We also have to think, and I think in the office, we have to think more critically around how we highlight those employers who do the right thing every single day, who pay their workers on time, who ensure that, of course, they have access to everything they need and are entitled to. The office also has two essential functions that affect the bottom line of consumers and businesses all across the Commonwealth. Working closely with the Health Policy Commission, of course, we work to curb the rise in healthcare costs. And as the statutory ratepayer advocate for Massachusetts, we ensure that the utilities charge the lowest available rate for power. Today, for example, we're releasing a new report analyzing 6 years of electric rates charged by the so-called electric supply companies to their customers. For each of the 6 years that the office analyzed the actual rates charged by these suppliers to their customers, the office found tens of millions of dollars in net consumer losses for Massachusetts households. The 2023 update finds that from July 2020 through June 21, consumers paid close to $100 million more than they would have paid if they received electric supply from their electric distribution company. Over the entire 6-year period, there are several studies on this, July 2015 to June 2021, Massachusetts consumers in the individual residential electric supply market paid $525 million more than they would have paid if they received, of course, their electric supply from an electric distribution company. Those numbers are horrendous. And the findings of this most updated report shows that this disproportionately affects, as you can imagine, low-income customers, those who are living in poverty, those who are English learners, and those, of course, living in rural parts of the Commonwealth. It also shows that competitive suppliers disproportionately signed up intentionally and charged higher rates to these households. So we are pushing for legislative solutions to end this residential electric supply market, which frankly everyone in this room should care about. Because all of this is to say, as we're protecting consumers, if you are conducting business and doing the right thing, which I like to think everyone in this room is, you shouldn't have to compete with someone who's doing the wrong thing, plain and simple. Lastly, well, actually not lastly, I have a couple more pages. I'm looking here. My office and I think it's really important to promote economic mobility, not just economic opportunity. I don't want to just make sure that your workers get paid and are protected as consumers. I want to make sure that they can afford to live here, move here. That means leveraging every tool in the AG's office to ensure that they have an opportunity to move up the ladder, remove obstacles to success, particularly in low-income communities, middle-income communities, and of course, communities of color that have far too often been left out and left behind and discriminated against. So when we talk about barriers to economic mobility, housing affordability rises to the top. As we all know, Massachusetts has a severe housing crisis that disproportionately affects communities of color and working families. For too many in our state, home ownership is out of reach. In fact, according to the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, and I was asking the team to look up this number, which hasn't changed, it's actually gone up. As of March, the median price of a home in Massachusetts is $562,000. That threatens all of us. And of course, the economy we want to build in Massachusetts to ensure we remain competitive, and of course, that folks will continue to come here. We know owning a home is a pathway to economic mobility, to growing a family, and thriving into, of course, a thriving community. We don't need another report on that. And there is a role for an attorney general to play in the housing space. Take, for example, of course, the recent advisory on the MBTA communities law. Many folks in this room were active partners in that. Thank you very much. This law is simple. It's intended to remove barriers to reasonable development and to make sure that multifamily housing can be built in communities that have the MBTA as a public good. There were many folks who thought compliance with this law was optional. We put out the advisory to say, no, it's mandatory. And immediately the response was, what can we do? What can we do to build more housing? This is a beautiful thing. And of course, I'm not naive. There may be a few municipalities that choose to go in the opposite direction, and we will use every enforcement tool to ensure they do what's right by that law, because it's so critical to address this housing crisis. Our office also does more in the housing space. We have an entire neighborhood renewal division that goes into various communities, including communities, of course, where your businesses are situated, to ensure that any blighted property in those communities is turned into bright spots, using the receivership power or other tools to make sure every community, regardless of where it is in the Commonwealth, is a lovely place to live. Housing is not just about generating, of course, more housing and developing more housing. It's making sure that every community actually is a beautiful community with no blighted properties to afford folks choice, so that everyone has a choice in truly deciding where they want to live. We have a consumer advocacy and response division that addresses complaints when it comes to landlord tenants, which is a major issue right now that has actually outpaced all of our complaints related to used car dealers. That's still a major issue, so if you're in that industry, make sure you're doing right by used cars consumers. But these issues, all of these issues, will be a critical part of the office. And my job is to make sure that any conversation we have around economic mobility and the tools in the office that we can use to advance that is actually done across every bureau and division in the office. So I've actually hired someone for the first time in the history of the office to be in the executive bureau, whose role is to be a senior advisor for economic opportunity and mobility. This person will be in touch, of course, with many folks in this room, not only in the business, private sector, philanthropic community, nonprofit sector, on all the tools we can use to finally allow folks to move up. The conversation is too status quo. Give someone a home, a job. No. How do we promote them? How do we make sure, of course, the next family, the next generation can do better than the last? That's what this work is about, and there's a key role for us to play. And to the traditional things that you think of when it comes to the AG's office, we have not slowed down in doing that work either. Yes, our job is to protect you, to make sure you're safe, and to make sure your rights are protected here in Massachusetts, even as, say, the Supreme Court goes backwards. We're doing everything in our power to make sure our common sense gun laws here in Massachusetts are enforced. And let me tell you, they are coming for our common sense gun laws. I've only been in the office 100 days or so as of Friday, and the amount of briefs I've had to review to make sure the progressive laws we have on the books, which are the most progressive in the country, stay on the books is significant. So we're going to establish a gun violence unit which is designed to make sure we're not only enforcing those laws, but doing everything we can to share best practices with law enforcement to make sure they have all the tools to, of course, do the same in their municipalities in the face of that recent Supreme Court case. We're also making sure that we're holding credit card companies accountable. Recently, American Express and Visa, major credit card companies, said that they would track gun purchases at gun stores. They were pressured by a lobby, and they decided to go back on that commitment. And we said absolutely not. There is a role for everyone to play when it comes to the violence we are seeing in this country that affects all of us, including our children. There is significant work that we can do, and credit card companies, for example, can play a role in that. If you can track someone buying milk at Walmart, why not weapons? This is critical information that can inform investigations to keep all of us safe, to keep guns out of the hands of those who would use it for illicit purposes or for trafficking. And when we're keeping you safe, I'd be remiss if I did not mention reproductive justice. We will do everything in our power to ensure access to an abortion, not only here in this Commonwealth, but in this country, and reproductive health care, which is critical health care for everyone. And I've been saying, I would have also clapped on guns, no offense. That's just as important. Kids are dying in the country. Kids are dying in the country. But I often say, regardless of your position personally on how you feel about a right to an abortion, I'm in favor of it. You should care about this. This is not just a woman's issue. If they can come after a right like this that we have defined as a civil right in this country with years of precedent, every other civil right that we probably take for granted is under threat. Every single civil right. So there is a role for everyone to play. As a mother of 2 young boys who are 3 and 5, God bless them, and my husband, got them out the door this morning smoothly. An absolute priority, and this was mentioned earlier, will be protecting the mental health, the physical and mental well-being of our children. Our children are struggling right now. Our children, in many ways, are struggling right now. While I'm fortunate that my kids are young and not on social media platforms and not processing all the things that, say, other parents are dealing with, the uptick in anxiety, depression, suicide is real. There's an epidemic in this country. There's an epidemic in Massachusetts. The office, of course, through the Healthcare Bureau, can do work with so many folks in this room to ensure folks and youth in particular have access to mental health and behavioral health services. We can begin conversations and, most importantly, get past the conversations to take action on the cost and the lack of access and delay in finding a provider. It shouldn't take so long to find someone when you're seeking help. That is currently the state of affairs in Massachusetts, even though we have the best healthcare system in the world. But we're going to do more than that. Just a few weeks ago, I joined attorneys general from across the country to announce a $462 million multi-state settlement, including $41 million for Massachusetts with the company Juul for their role in contributing to the youth vaping epidemic nationwide. When Juul burst on the scene, the conduct was simple. It was irresponsible. It targeted young people. It looked at ways to aggressively market to a certain population of young people to sell their products and to use influencers and certain marketing strategies to get them hooked on those products and, of course, to increase their profit. I'm not against profits. It's important. Businesses, we often take some of your profits to use for services. It's important. But we can do it in a way that we protect our children and it's responsible at the same time. I'm really proud of the work of the team on this case. But sadly, there are more entities that are causing our youth harm. Social media companies. While there is some benefit to these companies, there are also devastating consequences. We are currently investigating mental health impacts, or the mental health impacts of social media on youth. Of course, looking at Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, where there is substantial evidence that young users who are using these platforms suffer anxiety, depression, self-harm, especially young girls, at higher rates than if they were not using these platforms. And in a divisive political climate where Republicans and Democrats can't seem to get together on anything, and in Washington, D.C., I don't know what those people are doing with our hard-working money. I don't know. They have jobs. We don't know what they're doing. But I can tell you this. Attorneys general from across the country are actually working together across the aisle on this particular issue. This is amazing. It is amazing because we may not be able to talk about certain issues, but if we can get together, and the Tennessee AG, who's a Republican AG, is a part of the leading this effort. If we can get together and agree that we are here to protect our children and their well-being, that's a good thing. So we're leveraging those relationships to make sure we're taking on these platforms that are continuing to harm our most vulnerable. And we're doing so much more. We're training and working with school leaders all across the Commonwealth in every single county in Massachusetts on bullying and harassment and hate, and doing trainings in our school settings to protect not only our children, but to make sure they're having open and honest conversations about the differences that exist between them when it comes to sexual orientation, religion, every demographic you can think of. What does it mean to actually be able to connect with someone even if they are different from you? I told you at the very beginning of my remarks that my to-do list was very long. I wasn't lying. But I firmly believe that we are in a time where that list is shared not only, of course, by me in the office, but by all of you. Others in government, of course, the business sector, the nonprofit sector, the philanthropic community, by the entire Commonwealth. We are indeed the greatest nation, greatest state, I should say, in the nation. We are. Massachusetts is the best state in the nation. And I see that every single day with the incredible ecosystem we have here, not somewhere else, not across the border, right within Massachusetts, the talent, the expertise, the innovation, the resource, the healthcare ecosystem, of course, our higher ed institutions, and so much more. We do have an opportunity to lead, and frankly, there's an expectation that Massachusetts will lead not only within our state, but across the country, given the history, that ecosystem, the progressive laws we have here. We have everything it would take to demonstrate how to solve some of our most pressing challenges. And the country is looking to us on a whole bunch of things. So as we continue to develop and finalize our strategic plan, I hope each and every one of you will be a partner in that work. My team members are here. You know how to find us. Some of my dear supporters are here. We want to work in partnership with this critical community to get things done. I don't like wasting time. All of us have jobs. We're caregivers. We're parents. We volunteer. We need time to work out and eat healthy, to go for walks, all of that. So if we say we want to partner, and of course, we want to make sure that we do it in a way that is efficient, but most importantly, values your expertise, what you bring to the table, and of course, what we do in response, hopefully will demonstrate we're all in this together. So thank you all so very much for having me this morning. Thank you.
So thank you for the breadth of subject matter that you covered and the energy that you covered it with. You have to learn to be a little more direct, I think, though. For those of you that have not heard the Attorney General speak before, I know that you're saying, wow. Attorney General, you were kind enough to meet with some young professionals before this meeting. Thank you for making the time to do that. Yeah. A small group of 20 Chamber City Awake members. What was on their mind?
While we're standing up here and doing this, I saw those chairs, and I was like, with this dress, I'm not sitting up there. First of all, thank you. A whole bunch of things. One, I just was encouraging that group of young folks to put down the work sometimes and to network, to get to know folks in various industries, in different sectors. You can learn from each other, but most importantly, as we do the work, we can put our own wellness to the side. This space, this initiative offers opportunities for folks to come together, of course, to talk about work, but other things. If you're a parent, if you want to start a new business, what organizations might you want to join a board or do something productive? I also encourage them to come into this room to network with the folks in this room, which is just as important. and there were some of lawyers in that space. I encouraged them to leave their private law firm behind and to come work for the AG's office.
I neglected earlier to recognize we have State Representative Bill Driscoll here. Bill, where are you?
And Linda
Right
Garcia
here.
Warren.
And of course, a number of former, and the Attorney General reminds me that Linda Dorsina Fori is here someplace as well. And Anissa Wasabi George, City Councilor, and my neighbor in our neighbor in Dorchester.
Dan
Are you going to give me a whole bunch of people here? There you go, Dan.
I and Dan Cullinane, too.
And I do want to thank and acknowledge my friend Tom Glenn for stepping up as the new chairman of the MBTA Board of Directors. Thank you. You just like running into burning buildings, don't you? You know, those of us that know you have admired your call to public service and how you've responded to it. Talk a little bit, and you shared some of this, but talk a little bit about that and, you know, why you feel the need to respond to that call, but specifically the call to serve as Attorney General. What about that office said, you know, this is a place I can make a difference?
I often say I have the best job, not just in the Commonwealth, in the country. If President Biden were standing here, or Kamala Harris, I would say I have the best job. I'm sorry, but I do. So my public service and call to public service is really informed by the loss of my twin brother. Something as tragic as that happens, and of course Andrea and I were very close. I often share my story often, and so I make sure I'm not becoming detached from my own story. But we were very close, and when something as tragic as that happens, someone ends up incarcerated, dying in that system, and then the sibling goes off to Princeton and to UCLA, and by every metric is successful, you have to ask, well, what happened there? And so I did that. And at the time, I was working at Proskauer, which is still an excellent firm, and decided to leave that behind and to really pray. I speak about my faith very freely, to pray about why am I here, what am I meant to do with my life. I truly believe all of us are here for a unique purpose, and it's our job to figure out what that is. Imagine the world if we actually all did that, and we're doing what we were called to do. And so ended up going, of course, to MAPC, and some of my former colleagues are here, working for Governor Patrick. But working for Governor Patrick, really seeing him in action, but most importantly, not only having a table with folks of different background, but what it means to be the elected official with that lived experience or different perspective is really important. So ultimately ran for city council, and the rest is history. But the AG's office, it's great because it allows me to work on that systems reform, criminal legal reform, juvenile justice. I didn't go into those details very much, but really in a significant way and in a direct way, which is really exciting. And at the same time, the policy issues. I like to work on a whole bunch of things at once. This idea of pick 3 things, no. There are close to 600 people in office. We can work on more than 3 things. And families are dealing with more than 3 things. It's a lot of things. And so the office has the expertise, the talent, and the ability to work across a whole host of issues. Our goal is to define the themes that connect all of those issues and to make sure that not just lawyers understand what we're doing, but the average person understands and sees themselves in the work. But public service, it's amazing. I love it.
You know, you mentioned the many things on the stresses and things on the minds of residents, businesses too. I share your belief that this is the greatest state, but it's also a high-cost state. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned utility rates. We're in a energy transition period, and when the business community thinks about that transition, on their minds, cost, of course, reliability, and of course, clean energy. I mean, all 3 and finding the balance. You mentioned your office participates in the regulatory process and is very focused on this issue. But how do you, as we transition and think about energy, how do you balance those 3 issues, cost, reliability, and clean air?
So it's interesting when we are talking in the office, and I have a Energy and Environmental Bureau, and two folks, Rich Johnson, who was the chief legal counsel actually for our governor, is now the head of that. Maybe I wasn't supposed to announce that. We're announcing that at some point. Got to give Rich a shout out. He came from WilmerHale. I mean, the expertise that he comes with and decades of experience is significant, along with Turner Smith, who also has an impressive resume. And so every team I've formed to run a bureau, it's looking at making sure they have the institutional knowledge, but also some new energy and thoughts and ideas, and also making sure there's some diversity there too. And so this is something we talk about every day. I do think we say we don't have the option. When you think about climate change, environmental injustice, we don't have any time to waste. And so there is a way, we don't see making sure we're moving, of course, into a clean energy economy, reducing carbon emissions, as being on the opposite side, of course, of protecting our economy and making sure that folks can afford these rates. The report I mentioned that we'll formally release later today, I think is one example of, as we take on these conversations on how to do it, how to make sure no one in the state is being left behind as we transition to clean energy, especially rural communities and communities of color, that they understand how significant it is to be a part of the climate justice and environmental justice conversations, because it affects their bottom line. There are companies and some of the larger utilities in this room that we will go to because they are indeed providing affordable rates, and we have to work with them. They are part of this transition too. So one is engaging them, always having them at the table, while at the same time looking at those new companies that are coming in. Are they doing the right thing? And I think this report demonstrates maybe not, and that we have to rely on some folks who have been doing this work for some time. And so I've always set a table where everyone is at the table. Even when I was campaigning, a large energy table was formed, and I was meeting with everyone. Oil and gas was in the room, along with the Environmental League. And so I do think we can get to the place where we're reaching all of our environmental goals by having candid conversations with everyone, but most importantly, utilizing some of those utility companies that are looking to help us do this, maybe in a greater way, so that these other markets that are coming up and taking advantage, frankly, of consumers in significant ways are, frankly, done away with.
I need to ask a gambling question. So
You don't have to.
I do. So you mentioned some of the private enterprise that now are on gambling. As you think about the state in that business and potential on an online lottery system, what's your thoughts on that, and what concerns you about that?
I know, obviously, that's on the topic of discussion and hasn't been passed yet, the lottery going online. But I think it's similar to what we're seeing with betting and sports betting. We want to make sure from our office's perspective that it's responsible, that it's fair, and that they are really looking at the technology and making sure that it's not, of course, encouraging folks to bet when they don't have any money or to play when they don't have any money. Because if we actually are ahead of this and proactive versus being reactive, we can prevent a potential public health crisis. And when you talk about an addiction when it comes to, say, gambling, other addictions also come into play too, whether it's alcoholism, substance use disorder, or folks just, of course, ending up in poverty and what that does for their family and what that does for a community. And so we'll continue to follow the conversations in the state law, in the State House, about whether or not this actually happens, and we'll have similar conversations as we have been with the operators in the gaming industry on how to make sure it's responsible, working in partnership with them, which is really important.
And one final question, Attorney General. Your comments were laced with calls to action to the business community. But as we close this out, what is your broad call to action of the greater Boston business community?
That's a really great question. Everything I said, no. I think a few things. One is, in thinking about my remarks and coming here, of course I recognize the audience I would be speaking to. And we do have a task of protecting workers and consumers, families, children. That is all of you. I also recognize there is a unique perspective this audience has and may at times feel left out of some of those conversations. Well, as you're protecting all of those people and us individually, well, what about the businesses we create, the businesses we're attempting to sustain, and of course to grow the economy in Massachusetts and afford folks jobs and opportunity? So for me, it's when we are doing the work, you are part of that conversation internally. We view the perspective of this community significantly as we're promulgating regulations and thinking about how we approach new industries. We're not entirely experts within a particular industry, so we not only need you at the table in terms of your expertise, many of the gaming regulations and various things that we have talked about, the team went to folks in the business to hear from them, some situated in Massachusetts, some in New Jersey and other places, to get their thoughts and ideas. As we talk about ways in which to protect our young people, to really go after certain issues, public-private partnerships are going to be critical when it comes to a whole host of things. Housing, we've already done that. That MBTA advisory, the business community stepped up to say, yes, this is the right thing to do, along with housing advocates, trades, unions, and so many others. So as we think about those issues, we want to make sure that you're at the table to inform that there is a partnership with you on issue, policy, and everything else. And lastly, I know you probably just get calls for money. We want more than your money. No, I'm joking. I have heard from business leaders when I was on this, when I was on the city council. I'm joking in the sense that when I was on the city council, we often get the calls, an office or a government agency will craft a plan around some problem, then come to us after the fact and say, will you fund this initiative? I don't think that's a great process. I believe in starting at the outset. We have a new industry. Who in this room is connected to it in some way? What do we need to know? How do we learn from each other? How do we open lines of communication? What are the problems we see within this potential industry, now or in the future? What should we be thinking about? What do we think are the solutions to prevent certain things, including, say, a public health crisis? What are those solutions? And then how do we work together to create solutions that get at those problems? And what is the role that each of us plays, and how do we hold each other accountable to what we say we're going to do to solve the problem? One of my two things about government, two things that frustrate me, is how much money and time we waste not actually doing the things to solve the very problem we say we want to solve. Business does it really well. You don't have time to waste or money to waste. This is the problem. Okay, how are we going to solve it? I did learn something from the private sector and being at Proskauer. Every 6 minutes was money, that. But on top of that, if there are certain problems, making sure that the solutions we craft, maybe they're creative and varied, actually solve for the issue. And so we have no time to waste, and there's a lot we can learn from the business sector. And most importantly, what I'm challenged and challenging the team to think about is how do we lift up those businesses, for example, who have no issues with wage theft or child labor law violations, which of course is happening even in Massachusetts, but are doing the right thing every single day. I think there's an opportunity to celebrate those large employers, those businesses, give them a gold star, but to lift up, it is possible to do it while still generating a profit, while still, of course, meeting the mission of your business and protecting the worker and the Commonwealth all at the same time. So we're working on that piece too, which will be important to continue dialogue on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for opening the door to an engaged partnership with the business community. You can count on the Chamber and its members to heed that call. And thank you personally for heeding the call to public service. It's a better place in Massachusetts because you did that. So thank you, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.